All right. Well, let's get started. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. And like I said, we're starting from scratch. So create React app, everything. So you all should be able to see my screen. Maybe.
Not yet.
There. Now you should be able to with that fancy Zoom window that everybody's known to come and love.
Yes.
So we'll start with the terminal. And I have a folder for this on the desktop. And under webPt24. And in here, I'm just going to say npx create React app. And I'm going to name this Rick Morty. That sounds like a good. And we'll let it run through its motions. Oh, we got an error. What did I do wrong? Registry create. Oh, I just go React app. That's awesome. Let's try that again. There we go. That looks a little more promising. Ooh. And I don't know how you guys feel, but watching this sometimes like watching paint dry. It's like, yeah. Or watching golf. Yeah, that does it too. So how's everybody doing with the Thunk project so far?
I'm here.
Yeah.
Going over it again.
Almost done.
Almost done? That's good.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, some of these concepts like the finite state machine, that when I went through this, the state machine part made sense to me. I was like, all right, that's all the different states in your app. But how you implement it and touching like 5 different files just to accomplish a state change was just mind-boggling to me for a little while. And then finally it started to all make sense. You know, that big circle of trust that Redux has with React as it goes through everything. It's just that it took me a little bit to understand that. So if you guys are, got that already, you're further ahead than I was at this point. I'll say that. All right, we're almost there. And then while this is going, think of the packages that we're going to need for a fresh app that we're going to need to install. Because that's going to be the first thing we're doing. We're going to install the packages that we think we're going to need to initially start this project. Let's keep those in mind, and then I'll call on you and we'll be like, hey, let's install that. Man, Zoom is probably killing it. There it goes. Finally. All right. And now we're going to start coding. All right, everybody see VS Code? All right. So what we have here is just your basic create React app. It's got the boilerplate, the normal React stuff. So we're going to open up a terminal down in the bottom here. And then we're going to open up package.json to see what we have and what we think we might need. So right now our dependencies are the normal React stuff with some React testing library things, but nothing really relevant to our app other than React. So who could tell me what we should install to build a Redux-Thunk application?
Thunk.
Okay. So we're going to need Redux-Thunk. What else? Don't everybody jump at once now.
React Redux.
React Redux, right.
Axios.
Yeah. Missing a big one right here. We've kind of done everything that supports it, but what about Redux itself?
Oh yeah.
Let's get that one. Yeah, we kind of need that. That's important. All right. Anything else you guys think we need? This is pretty much the gist of it. I won't lie to you there. This is all we really need. You could put some fancy stuff on there like Logger or some other middlewares if you wanted to.
We should use Logger. That's actually a super good call. Thank you.
Redux Logger, we'll get it. And we'll grab them all. All right. Let's let that run. Watch more paint dry. So while that's running, let me move this little share window over here.
I was today old when I learned that you could install all of those on one line.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
That is
Yeah,
cool.
I didn't learn that till like 6 months in myself. I was like, oh man, it was like mind blown too.
Yeah.
All right, so next thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna come in here and I'm just gonna get rid of all the boilerplate React stuff. I'm gonna put an H1 in here that just says Rick and Morty. Now, when I'm first starting an application like this, the first thing I like to do is I like to grab the data. I like to see what it looks like, you know, before I start setting up my reducer and what my initial state's going to look like. When you have an API, you can go to the documentation. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. Most of the time it's the later, especially for a free API. A lot of times the documentation doesn't even match what you get. So I just like to, you know, throw a use effect hook in here, throw Axios in here, call it console log the data, see what we get. So, everybody agree with that, or they got another way they want to try it?
No, that sounds good.
All right,
Yeah.
let's do it. Let's grab some use effects. React, we'll come down to our app. We'll invoke it, use effect. Always first thing, put my dependency array in there so I don't ruin my free API that I'm going to access. And now we're going to grab Axios. Let's grab Axios. And if I'm a little slow, I've been typing Nest.js and Typeform all day, which looks completely different. So I've been struggling getting back into the React swing. Let's see, let's do an axios.get. Get, we're going to get to, I have the string over here. I did a little bit of research on this, so I was kind of prepared. 5 minutes prepared, I'll give you that. All right, so we got that. And we'll throw our happy path in there, .then. Then we're going to get a response, and we're just going to want to console log it. And we're going to tie the error catch, the sad path, I think they call it. They actually call it that on MDN. I thought that was crazy. Happy path, sad path. And here's a little trick. Like you get this error, and sometimes you console log error message and things like that. The error object actually has a lot of cool stuff in it that can help you really debug your code, like responses and things like that. But on the console log, you can't see that when you do it this way. You just kind of see the generic error, or if you type an error message, you see that. A little trick is, if you wrap it in an object when you log it, it'll show you the whole error object, and you can access all them little things.
That's cool.
Just a little extra tip. All right, so we have this running. We should be fetching some data. We can fire this up now and see what it looks like. I'll just kind of bring that over here. Might get a little split window action going on here. Get rid of the updates. I have a Mac. I don't want to update it. Every time you update a Mac, it slows down like 20%. You guys didn't hear that.
It's true.
Yeah. All right, let's kind of clean this up a little better, narrow that down. Everybody still see everything?
Yes.
All right, let's inspect the page. Let's see what we got. All right, app.js 8, that adds up with what we're console logging. We got an object. Object has data. Data has, I bet results is where we need to be. Oh, look, there's an array of characters. There's 20 of them in there. Cool. And you can see you got other things in here as well. Like you got info. The info object gives you how many total characters there are. It gives you a URL to hit if you want to use page pagination. So, you know, they're going to give you 20 characters at a time. What happens if you want the next 20 or the previous 20? So you're getting a little information here from the API, which is really cool to tell you, you know, the path to go to do that. Adding a query string with page 2 or page 3. 34 total pages to go back and forth through if you wanted to and build it that elaborate. And you get your status, which was 200. It shows you your header, basically The headers you'll learn more in Unit 4 about, but they define the content of what you're getting. There's two main contents in web development. There's pretty much JSON or XML or XHTML. You can get them either way. Most APIs work both ways. If you just send the content type, like ours is application JSON by default, you send it the other way, you'll get that stuff. A lot of .NET framework apps use that. So we kind of got an idea here. So let's start building the app a little bit. I'm going to create a folder called state. And this is the way I like to do it. It might be a little different than what you saw in instruction, but I like to keep like my reducer and my reducers, actions, all that in a state folder. And then I'll carry like components folders. If the app gets really big, I'll use like a views folder with subdirectories for each view of the application. But structuring an app is pretty much personal preference or whatever your boss tells you to do at the end of the day. So I'm going to put it in state right now. I'm going to keep it really simple. So I'm just going to create a new file in here, and I'm going to call it the reducer.js. We're just going to create it in here. And the first thing I'm going to create is a const called initial state. And this is the state that I think my application is going to run on. And best practice on this, you could set initial state to an array, I believe, but common practice is an object. It starts as an object. You can embed arrays in there with key value pairs, so on and so forth, but just try and initialize it with an object. I think it makes everything a lot happier. So looking at this, what do you think our state should look like?
Data.
Okay.
Error.
We're going to have data. Should we just call it data, or should we keep it like a little more?
We can keep more specific, like name of the character, for example.
How about characters? Well, let's have a characters array. So this results here, the array of all these characters. This is pretty much the main thing we care about, right? You'll even let me click on it. We're going to carry all of these in state. So let's do that. Characters. All right, and we're initially going to initialize that with an empty array. What else do you think the initial state for this should have? Now keep in mind,
fetching.
Is fetching, that's cool. Yeah, we'll use that, is fetching. And it doesn't have to be named that. It could be loading, is fetching, is doing whatever, just some kind of trigger state. And we're going to default that to false. Good call. What else do we need?
Error.
Yeah. Error state, and we'll keep that as an empty string right now. And can you think of anything else? This defines this, in my eyes, this defines the states that our app's going to be in. We're going to have a successful state. We're going to have characters. We're going to have a loading state where it's in between transitions of pages or views. And then we'll have an error state if something goes wrong, and we can display that, to the user interface, to the actual user, so they can see something more than just a generic red screen. Kind of like how many of you guys gotten the little unicorn from GitHub with the 404 error, something like that. And that's what they do with the error messages. All right. So going once, going twice, we will start with this. So let's build our reducer. I'm just going to name it reducer. Const reducer. I cannot type equals a function, and it's just a JavaScript function at the end of the day. So our reducer takes two arguments, two parameters. What are they?
State and action.
Yeah, state and action.
But we should define the state as like initial state.
Initial state.
Yeah, give it a default value. And the purpose of that is I cannot type. Purpose of that, I don't know if they went over it in lecture, is that this is going to control your state on the initial render of the application. So if you have components that are rendering dependent on this stuff, like this empty array right here, and you don't have it defaulting to that value, you'll get the classic map is not a function error code before your app even renders. So you want to give it that default. So on the initial pass, the initial render, before it even invokes like the use state or the component did mount for a class component, all that stuff, you don't want it to error out until it gets to that point. So that's why we use that default there. All right, what does a reducer hold? That's the key statement that basically drives it.
Switch statement.
Yeah, switch. All right, and what are we switching on?
Action type.
Yeah. All right, we're switching on the action type because that's the type of action represents the object that we dispatch to the reducer. So, I mean, these all could be banana words. Keep that in mind when you're naming parameters, as long as you keep those names consistent within the function that they're scoped to. They could be named anything, but order is everything. So like state always has to be the first parameter and actions always have to be the second. You mix those up, it will work all kinds of weird. Just something else to keep in mind. Now, the one thing you should always type in a reducer when you first create it is the default. So we don't know what kind of actions we're going to need yet. We don't know what's going to happen. We just want a default to return the state. This way, this reducer will function right out of the box. So it'd be like, okay, this is going to deliver the state. It's not going to change any state or anything, but whatever we have in this initial state, it's going to feed to the app right away. Any questions on that? All right. So now our next move would be let's go connect it. Let's get Redux and all the motion here, the reducer, all that stuff. Let's get it connected to our app. So we're going to go into, I'm going to do it in index. I like to do it in index. Index.js, I'm going to start bringing in all the things, as Ken Dodds would say, to make this work. Can somebody tell me the first thing I might need to get?
Provider
Yeah,
and create
sure.
store.
All right, provider. Where does provider come from?
Oh,
I know it's so confusing. It took me forever too.
React
Redux,
React Redux, yes. And the way I found that helps me personally figure out the difference between the two is anything that React depends on from Redux, like Connect, the provider, those are both basically components, React components. They come from the React Redux library. But anything that just Redux operates on outside of React, so like things that would control your reducer, the reducer itself, like your middlewares, things like that, they just come directly from Redux because they're actually running outside of React. That's why they're actually declared outside of the React ecosystem. We declare that variable out here before React's even really mounted. So let's go grab our other things. So we need to import, I heard a create store. All right, so create store, where's that coming from?
Redux.
Redux.
All right. What else would we need?
Import our reducer.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get our reducer. Get our reducer from that file path. Slash, we're gonna go into state and grab that reducer. All right, what else will we need? Now
Thunk.
remember, we're building a Thunk application, yeah? So we're gonna import Thunk. Redux-Thunk. And what else? So we got some logger in there, right? Let's get some logger. Now, keep in mind, we are building a asynchronous Redux application. Is there anything that you see on that list that's missing? Or better yet, what does Thunk and logger need to work?
middleware.
Yeah, real close. It's apply middleware.
Apply middleware. Thank you.
Apply middleware. Okay, now we have all the things, I think, anyway. We might run into some more. We got to grab them as we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create the store. So I'm going to say const store, and you can name this anything you want. And this is going to be from the create store method out of Redux. First argument in create store is
Reducer.
Reducer.
yeah, let's give it the reducer. And the second argument or apply middleware. Yeah, apply middleware. Now, apply middleware takes a series of arguments. It takes a lot of arguments.
So logger and thunk.
But if I put it in logger and thunk, what if I told you if I put it in that way, it would not work?
I would believe you.
Logger is a weird animal. Redux logger is, and this is a common problem with people that use it. Logger always has to be last in the apply middleware. For some reason, if it's ahead of any other middlewares that you want to use, when the apply middleware method gets to logger, it stops. It doesn't progress any further. So if you put in logger and then thunk, your thunk wouldn't function.
Okay.
So always remember that logger is last. So we'll put in thunk and then logger. They might have fixed that since some recent updates, but I'm not willing to try. I just always put it last. All right, so we have that. Now what's the next thing we need to do?
Wrap the provider.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do the provider. Oh, and I hit the caps lock. Yeah. Provider.
Store
We'll
equals
wrap the
store.
app. Yep, store equals store. So store, this name right here has to match because that's the prop declared by provider. But this one stands for whatever you named it up, whether it be, state, store, whatever you want to call it. That's what that name is. So now we should have Redux connected. So to verify that, we're going to go into our app.js file where we have just this use effect call, and I'm going to connect it to Redux. So how would I connect it to Redux?
Connect.
Yeah. That comes from React Redux because it is a component. We come down here, it's a higher order component. So it's gonna wrap app. So that's the way I think of it down here. It like hijacks it, like clamshells that component. It says it's mine now. I'm gonna control what goes in and out. All right, now connect takes 2 arguments. Can anybody tell me just the types of arguments that connect takes?
Map state to props, map dispatch to props.
All right, what is map state to props?
The state which are switching.
All right, so if I just create an object called map state to props, it'll work.
We need to create the object outside the connect function with a return statement. If I'm
Yeah,
right.
exactly. It's a function. This is another confusing thing too that I just want to lay out to you. So the first one is always a function. The second one is an object.
Okay.
Always remember that. So when you're building like your map state and your map dispatch, first one's the function, which is your map state. The second one is your dispatch, which is an object that just has your actions in it. And you can, the cleanest way to do it I found. Oh, what did I just do? There we go. Unbreak. Refresh. Okay. Expected the reducer to be a function. What did I just hit and mess up? Reducer is a function. Oh, I know why. I forgot something really important on this. Anybody know what it is?
Export.
Yeah. That might make it better. Hey, okay, we're back to the living. All right. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to create that function called, we'll call it function. And you can use a fat arrow, I believe, because it's above it. I like to use function when I do these because it hoists, just in case I'm declaring it somewhere else. I don't have to worry about it. The order that it's written in. App state to props. All right. And what's this function going to do? How are we going to set this up? Function takes what as a parameter?
State.
Okay. And we can name it anything we want, but we'll call it state just to keep everything less confusing. And then here we're going to return what?
Characters, it's state characters. error
State.
state error, and
Yeah.
dispatching state dispatching.
All right. So we're going to return. Is that an object?
Yes, definitely.
It is an object. All right. Okay, there we go. So we're going to return an object. Now we can say, we can just return state if we wanted to, and then you can destructure it out of the props. But I believe that the whole point of Redux is you connect every component that's requiring state. You only give it that slice of state that it wants, which right now we don't know what this wants yet. We're just kind of connecting it. So we're going to leave it as state for now, but I like where you're at with the errors and stuff. But as we build this, errors might be the only thing we need in the app. We might have the other components working off of the characters and the other things. So we're going to put our map state to props in there. Now this all should be happy. And then I'm just going to come up here. I'm going to do it right here between the render and return. And we're going to bring in props. And how this connect function works, this higher order function, is it injects whatever the resolution is from this map state to props function. And if you have the dispatch objects, it like injects that into the props of that application. So we'll get into some other errors later that happen with actions when you do that, if you don't have it set up properly, but that's where it's going to come from. So if we console log props, let's console log props, and we should see a state object there, or just data. So we'll get that refresh so it's clear, and you can see it right there, JS14, that's our line. And we have a state object, and it has dispatch. Dispatch has nothing in it yet, but connect just gives that to us already. It's saying, hey, I'm prepared to have dispatches happen. So we can look at our state. It's our characters array that's 0, is fetching's false, and errors and empty strings, exactly what we expect. So we're off to a really good start. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to create our actions. So I'm going to come up here. I'm just going to create another file called actions. I know it's going to be a small app, so I'm not really destructuring these things out further than what they need to be. Don't want to overthink it too much. As your app grows, you can change things and manipulate things, like have an actions folder and have a series of actions that are relevant to like each portion. But for this, we really only need just like one. So I'm going to create an action here. What do you think I'm going to need for this action?
To create string constants.
Yep, we have to do that, but we're going to be making API calls out of here, right?
So we need to create a function which
Yeah.
is dispatching the.
Before we do that, let's grab Axios. All right, and now we can create, we'll create the string first. So we'll say, we're going to want to export these strings because we're going to want to use them in our reducer. These are going to be our action types. And let's say we're going to call this, I don't know, what do you guys want to call the one that gets the characters, that makes the initial GET request to API? We call it like fetch characters, get Rick and Morty.
Fetch, so we can be consistent. Fetch characters.
You want to do fetch characters? All right. Fetch characters. That's going to equal a string of the same. And everybody know why we do this, even though it seems really redundant.
So it's impossible to misspell it later.
Yeah, because
Exactly.
it could be a typo.
Yeah, you misspell a string, it still compiles. It just doesn't work. It's like CSS, you know, that really crummy styling language that they make us learn that never gives you an error. It just stops working, and you got to go find out why. Yeah, that's what the string will do to you too. Right. Don't tell the Unit 1 teachers I said that, but that's how I feel about it. All right, so now let's create a function. Let's create a function that's going to do this. We want to call a function. We call it get characters, fetch characters, get API. We want to call it
Get characters.
get characters. All right. It's going to equal a function. Are we going to need any parameters to make this work? It's just a
Not
GET
up-
request, right? We shouldn't need anything.
Not
So-
up here.
So that's going to return another function because we're using thunk. Now this second function, that's going to take in a parameter. Anybody know what that is?
Dispatch.
Yeah. Right. So this looks really funky, but that's exactly what's happening here. This it uses like a little bit of implicit returns here, but it's basically the get characters function returns a dispatch function that then returns a series of dispatch objects as it runs. And what Thunk does, the Thunk middleware, it checks. It's like the bouncer at the club. So when you're walking in, it checks if you're an object, it just lets you right on by, lets you go into the reducer club. But if you're a function, it says, whoa, wait a minute, we got to figure this stuff out. And it makes you sit there and dig through your purse or your wallet until you find your 3 or 2 object IDs, and then it lets you go to the reducer. Kind of make sense? All right, cool. All right, so let's start with that. What's the first thing we want to dispatch? Think about our finite state machine. What do we need to, when this thing fires up, what do we want the users to see?
Type fetch characters.
Are we going to be fetching the characters right away? Well,
We can create actually like start, success, and error if we want to.
Yeah, let's do that. So we gotta create that string for that. So we're missing some of them up here. All right, so what do we want to call our is fetching / loading statement we want to trigger first?
Start.
You want to call it start? All right.
Fetch start.
Fetch start. All right. All right, let's go ahead and get our error one taken out too. So we're going to export cons. What do we call that? Should we keep it consistent? Fetch error.
Mhm.
All right. All right, now we have our 3. Now we can come down to this first dispatch. Yeah. Our action object, which is what's going to be dispatched here, it has 1 to 2 parameters normally. What's the first one called? Or 2 keys, I should say.
Type.
Yeah, type. And what's our type going to be?
Fetch start.
Yeah. Let's start. All right. Do we need a payload? Do we need any data for this to happen? No, we do not. Correct. I like the head shake. It was correct. All right. Axios. Let's make our call. If I can type it. Axios.get. And we're going to get, and actually, you know what? We're just going to erase this stuff. We already typed this stuff once, and I don't like to type a lot. I'm going to go to my app, and I'm just going to snag it all right here. I don't need that. I just need this part. Snatch that out of there. Go to our action. I'm going to drop it right here. I'm just going to make some changes. We're not going to, well, we might console response still. We're just going to go ahead and put our curly braces in here, though. We're going to make this a little bigger. Make it a little bit bigger. And then we'll keep our error. We're going to do the same thing there because we're going to write some extra code in there as well. There we go. A little cleaner. So now we're doing our GET request. Now we have our happy path. So our happy path, we want to dispatch in here too, right? This is if, okay, we got our characters. We need to update our state. We need to get our data out there, get it going. So we're going to dispatch the same thing. It's going to be a type. And our type is going to be
Fetch characters.
Yeah. Oh, I was typing nothing. Check me out. Fetch characters. Yeah. All right. And do we need any data here? Are we getting any data back that we need to put in our reducer?
So it's payload.
Payload. And our payload is going to be, we have no idea, right? At the moment.
So let's just use the result res. Or
But we did kind of log that, didn't we? So yeah, a good call. Let's go check it out. Let's see what it says. It looks like our payload's going to be, we'll start with the response because that's our object that's coming out of here. And it looks like it has a data key, but we'll check that to make sure. Yeah, data is where we need to be there. So we'll say dot data. All right. And then inside of data, are we where we need to be yet? No, we need results. So data dot results. And does results give us what we want? Net array is what we want, right? Yeah, that's what we want. All right, there we go. And we'll actually ditch that because I think we're good there. And now here we got to do our last dispatch. We got to dispatch the sad path. So this is going to have a type, fetch error, and our payload. Payload is going to be an error object. And I did my usual, throw some extra numbers in there to confuse everybody. But yeah, there we go. And we'll get rid of that console log. We really don't need that anymore either. We got everything going into our state now. So now that we have that, we can ditch Axios out of app. We don't need use effect anymore. And let's refresh it and see if it works. Okay, we got state back. Everything's still functioning. Nothing's happened yet because we haven't implemented it yet. We just created an action. So let's go implement our action in our reducer. All right, so we're gonna go in our reducer. Now we need to bring in some things for this to work properly. Do you know what we need to bring in?
Cases, the fetch start.
That's right. Yeah, we need all of our cases. Fetch characters. Start. And fetch error. They're coming from our actions. So that is why I initially exported those. So I kind of got in front of it. I knew we were going to need them somewhere else. So let's create our first case. We're going to get our characters. So let's create a case for the characters. Case. What's the first one we should create? Should we create our loading first? Should we create our error first? Our success first? It really doesn't matter in a switch statement. It's just pure user preference.
Start.
All right, we'll do the start. So fetch start. And our fetch start case is going to do what? It's going to return something. I know that. And it's going to be an object because our whole state object is an object. What do we want to do in here?
I'm going to copy our state.
Yes, state. And what else should we change?
Switch is fetching statement to true because it's fetching now.
Yeah. Fetching true. All right. And anything else? Looks like about it to me. Yeah, so we'll have that state now. And then we'll go ahead and create another case. What's our next one going to be? Man, quiet group. Eli's driving the show right now. Come on, guys. Going what? Oh man, you're gonna make me just talk it out, huh? What if I don't know what to do next? How are you guys gonna help me? Confused.
Fetch characters.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that one. Fetch characters. All right. And what do we want to do with the fetch character? We know we're going to return something. We're going to return an object that's going to be copying our state. That's a given. But what do we want to do? Remember, we're doing this off of our action object, and we can always reference back to our actions. So let's see what fetch characters is doing. Oh, that's our happy path. So we're getting some data there. We're getting that results array. So where we want to put that results array in our state.
In the characters.
Yeah, that's right. So we're going to say we're going to create a new characters key, and we're going to set it to the action.payload. And what else do we want to do? Remember, at this point, our app is still loading. It's still fetching. We got to turn that off, right? It's fetching back to false. All right. So this should be our success path. And just so you guys are aware, if you're a little leery on objects and the spread operator, how that works, something that's helped me in the past when I was really learning this is whenever you're creating copies of things with like the spread operator here, this generates a whole copy of everything that's in here. When you define something after that, everything to the left of the colon is in JavaScript eyes a new value. Even though it matches this original one, it will just overwrite whatever's there. But if you add like an extra G here and run it, you'll actually see your state has an is fetching is false, and then it is fetching is true. It'll put them both in there. So you can actually, and this might create bugs for you, but it might be a really cool feature. You can add keys to state as you run through it. It doesn't have to be in your initial state. If I had something in here that was going to be like, all of a sudden I was like, well, when I get to this point of the app, I'm going to want a locations key with the locations array for characters in a different portion of state. You don't have to put it in the initial state. You can add that as you go with the spread operator and declare it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Saw a little bit of confusion.
Can you explain that again?
Yeah, sure. So when you're creating this object here, I'll reword it a little bit too. This is technically a brand new object. It doesn't exist in JavaScript until we put these curly braces in. When we put the spread operator state in, we basically say, copy all the things out of here. Copy all the things that are in state, and that's what's going to be in here now. And then when we declare a key on that, right here to the left of the colon, that's actually declaring a new value. That is not like to say and make, characters is going to be this. That's saying we're going to create a new value called characters. The names match, so they will override each other. And that's why they look the same. But if you do put a typo in here, like characters, action payload, you'll see that the characters array will still be empty. And you'll have a brand new key in state called characters that actually has your data. So you want to pay close attention to your naming. But what I was explaining is you can add like a piece of state that's not in your initial state with a reducer as you do that. So like, let's say in here, we had, let's say we got a location of all the characters, and it was an array too. And it came from like action.payload location. If I did that, that would actually generate a location key in my state with whatever data I sent to it. So when I logged state at that point, I'd have characters, is fetching, error, and location in there. So
Okay, so that's how you would write it out.
Yeah, you can add stuff on the fly if you need to.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
No problem. All right, and let's create our last case. Let's get it going so we can see this thing work. All right, coast. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so we only have one left. Fetch, error, sad path. Nobody likes this path. And return a copy of state, and we're going to set our load. Well, I always call it loading, but it's is fetching. We're going to set that back to false because we're no longer in a loading state at this point. And we're going to set our error to the action.payload. That should be it. Any questions on that? Going once, going twice. Should we see it run? Let's refresh it and see it run. Maybe. Did it not run? Did it not run? Why didn't it run? I know why it didn't run. Does anybody else know why it didn't run?
Because we forgot to add map dispatch to props.
Yes, that is correct. So what is map dispatch to props? What does that object need? These are action, right? Let's grab our action. Import, what do we name that thing? I think it was called get characters. And we're gonna get that from our dot slash state actions. All right, now we got get characters. Now, like the map dispatch to props goes in here. You can do this a number of different ways. I am really lazy and I normally just put an object in here and type in get characters.
Should it be get characters above since it's a named instead of set characters?
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right.
You have a misspelling.
Yeah, there we go. All better. That's the way I normally do it. So this basically says, you know, it's like object notation. I'm creating an object because I declared the curly braces. And inside that object is going to have a get characters key that has a get characters value. They're just both going to be the same name. But you can do it this way. You could do, we could also like say const map dispatch to props, capital O, I don't like that. And we'll set that equal to an object and we can say get characters, colon, get characters. And then if I put map dispatch to props in here, it's that's state. Why don't you give me state? That's doing the same thing. Any questions on that? And you can even break it down one less further. We can get rid of the key. You could just say, is it the same name? You can make it get characters. Now we can see if we look in our state right here, we see the get characters method running, right? Get characters is there. Now let's say I had like, you know, I wanted to name it something else when I use it in the app. I could name it, we'll call it API. And I save this to see my function name change to API in the props up here. But what it's actually doing is it's running get characters. So in here now, I do have to bring back my use effect. Shouldn't erase that. React. And we'll go ahead and declare that up here. Use effect. Call it back. Dependency array. And in here, I'm going to say get characters. That should work, right? How many, who thinks that's going to work? And everybody's quiet.
It's not supposed to be like props, if I'm right.
That's right. Yeah. And this is a common mistake that a lot of people make, especially when they're first learning Redux, because you import the action up here, right? So you're like, oh, I put it in my map dispatch to props and I invoked it. It should work. Think of it as that vicious Redux circle. So get characters is coming right down into your map dispatch to props. Then it's going through Redux in this higher order connect component. And then it's injecting it into app to be used through props. So it's doing like this circle back up to here to be used with inside your code. So now if I do props.get characters, that's not going to work either because I renamed it down here. Get that big old error. Props.get characters is not a function. So I was showing you guys that we can rename it. We can make this API. That should work. Oh, look, and logger kicked in. Now, this isn't normally common practice. This is a little bit of my laziness sometimes. And also, if you have something that's named similar already in a large code base, and you just want to change the name of it before it's injected so it's easier and less confusing when you're reading through the code, it's that ability is there. Let's change this back to regular get characters and change this to get characters. All right. And yeah, now we got the logger working. When you see that logger light up, that's when you know stuff's happening. So if we go in here, we'll see our previous state is, oh, let me refresh that because that's old stuff. All right, previous state, characters, array 0, fetching false. All right, we know that's working. Click on it. The action, fetch start. What's our next state? Same thing, but fetching's true. So that's working. We got our initial render of our application hitting those other console logs I got in there. And then we got the fetch characters. This is our success. So we can see our previous state still has true in it. Our action is fetch characters, and that payload is actually, it tells you it's got an array of 20 objects in it. So our next state has that array of 20 objects. Fetching is back to false, and error is not populated because it was happy. So if we console log props dot state, we should see our characters right there. So we can say props dot state dot characters. And, oh, I erased the thing. There we go. And now we can see our characters. So we can see the chaining that's happening up here that we might want to change in our map state to props, depending on what we need for this. So that's in general the basics of Thunk and the finite state machine. We could go further if you guys want to. If you guys want to bail out, you can. I'll take it a step further. We'll start making some cards if you guys want to. I'm displaying some stuff. We want to
Display it.
You want to make stuff happen?
Make
All right.
magic happen.
Let's do it. All right, let's create us a folder called components. And in here, I'm gonna put I'm gonna create a new file. I'm gonna call this the character list.js. And then for each, that's gonna be my container for all of my cards. So I'm gonna create a character card.js without that capital H. All right, so now we have the list and the cards and all that cool stuff. So let's start building out our character list. This is what's going to hold our list of characters, or 20 characters or whatever we have. So we don't have to import React from React anymore with the new update, so that's kind of cool. We can just say export const character list and equal a function. Throws backwards. There we go. And right now we're gonna return some JSX out of this. So we're gonna return a div. That div is gonna hold some stuff. Yeah. Can't spell that right. Stuff, sure. Just some placeholder things. So this is our list, and this is going to hold our cards. So let's go just boilerplate out our character card real quick. Export const character card equal. This is going to return. We'll break it apart a little differently. We'll put some of these guys in here, and then we'll wrap that in a div just because we can. Yeah, sure. So now we have that export, and let's import that into our character list now. And then down in here where our some stuff is, this is where I'm gonna wanna put that thing. But I'm gonna be making a bunch of them. So we're gonna change that logic a little bit here in just a moment. Now, since this is the list container of our data, all right, and our initial app render is setting our state for us, we don't have to run any endpoint calls in here, but we do have to connect it to Redux. The beauty of this is, I would say, is that when you have your app returning here, you shouldn't, unless it's mapping over something, you should not be injecting any props into the stage of that. It should just be like a list of components. That's all you see. Everything else, like anything that's depending on state, you should connect that component to Redux and grab exactly what piece of state it needs from it right then and there. Does that make sense?
Nope.
Why not?
Repeat it in a different way because I'm trying to grasp it. What?
Okay, so you guys remember prop drilling and drilling props into components, right?
Mm-hmm.
The whole purpose of Redux beyond the finite state machine is not to do that anymore. So like, I could, truthfully, I could have, like, I'm gonna need it in here anyway, but I could say, let's import our character list. Slash components slash character list. Now I could technically go character list, call that component, and I can say characters equals, let's see, we got props, state, characters. You could do this and it would work, but it defeats the purpose. So let's think about it this way. Let's say that this character list was 5 components down in the component tree from app that needed this data that we just fetched in app. At that point, you would have to be pretty much copy and pasting this line through the components as it went down until it got to where you needed it, right? With Redux, you have the ability to where you don't have to do that anymore, to where this is not dependent on props. I could take him to get those characters out of there. I can go into my character list and connect it to Redux and get it. So we can import. And it looks a little redundant on a smaller application, but when you get into the larger stuff, this is really, really, really useful.
Okay, yeah, I understand. So you're just connecting the that'll be using props.
Correct. Yeah. The only time you should be injecting props is if you're mapping over something, I guess is the best way to say it. I'm gonna make this a default export. That way it doesn't confuse you guys too much on how to do it with an individual one. Character list. And I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna work, hijack it with connect. We're going to connect this to Redux. Now we have it connected, kind of. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Let's go get rid of them curly braces. All right. There we go. And we're happy. All right. So I'm going to connect it. Now I got to do my function, my map state to props function, which I'll show you guys another shorthand to do that. That's just, you can make that an anonymous function. So it can get very redundant of copy and pasting a map state to props function into every component that you want to connect. So you eventually get lazy and you just put this good old fat arrow function right in here. And you say state. And I want to return state dot, actually it would be implicit return object, I believe. Actually, no, wait, that should work. State dot, let's see, characters dot, should just be state dot characters, right? And then we'll go and grab our props and we'll console log the props to see if we got it. And I'm gonna go ditch this other console logs, actually. Let's get rid of This one needs to go. And did I have one in the actions? I think I did. Gotta do some housekeeping here. Oh, that one's gone. Reducer, I don't have any. Let's refresh this, clean it up, see if I got any hitting anywhere. Character list has one. That's what I need. All right, and you can see I have my array right there, just right in props. Make sense? Let's get rid of this reducer. Let's go to our character list of props. We injected characters, so console log props, characters. This might break. Refresh. Yeah, undefined. So props is actually it. So if we take this back from state.characters to just state, that might work a little better for us. Yeah, so state, we've got characters as props now. So we can say props.characters, or you can destructure that out of there by going, what do we really need here? All we really need is the characters, right? So we can just put an object in here and say characters. We can console log the characters. So you can change the way you're delivering state and how you're doing things to make that work. Whatever makes it easier for you to understand, or whatever's easier in the flow of the app. Because the last thing you want to do is type props.state like 20 or 30 times through an application, but you can just destructure it once and declare it as characters. So all I got to do is type characters. Make sense?
Yes.
And if you look, character list has the state that we just put in up here without passing any props. So now I'll show you where you're gonna, and truthfully, we don't even need this stuff here. We don't need state to props. So that brings me up to another question that probably gets looked over. What if we don't need map state to props in a component? We just need, truthfully, the actions, dispatch. If you do this and just pass map dispatch to props to connect, is it going to work? Let's
I
find
think
out.
so.
Oh no, it just blew up. Oh yeah, it's mad. There's all kinds of red in there. Invalid value object type for map state to props argument. So remember, JavaScript parameter names don't mean much, but order is everything. And connect's first argument, no matter what you name it, is expecting a function, which we name like map state to props, or put the anonymous function there. Now we don't want to use that, but we want to use the second parameter available to us, which is our map dispatch. So if you run into a case like that, all you have to do is type in null comma, and we should be all better. So our first parameter we're not using, so we gave it a null value. And our second parameter that we want to use, map dispatch to props, is still valid. Any questions? So tips and tricks of the trade here, right?
Okay. Is it necessary to take out the map state the props?
I think it's better if you're not using it in the component. Because if you're not using that in the component, why write the code and put it in there? So think about it, if I was writing this code right now and all this is doing is fetching the API, I'm not using state anywhere in here. I wouldn't have even wrote this. I would have just connected it, gave it a null value, and map dispatch to props. When you're writing state in here and you're returning state up here, it's meaningless code, if you know what I'm saying. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you're talking about now. I understand.
Yeah. I mean, you can still put in there, it's not going to break your app, but that's just extra code, this extra stuff to compile. It's not going to matter with the machines nowadays unless your app is massive, but you could run into like runtime issues if it's really big, and you do that on all of them. But it'd have to be really big. I mean, 10 years ago, that would have been a major issue. But now with processor speeds and stuff, it's not a big deal. Let's do some character card stuff. So we have a character card down here. Well, we're just return a run character card. We know characters is an array, so we can kind of ditch that. But what we do need to do in here is we need to map over those character cards. And this is where we're going to say characters map. And we're going to say for each item in that array, we're going to implicitly return this character card. And the character card, now I have to pass props. This is where you have that point where you can't really connect this to the state store, because it's conditionally rendering a certain amount of these components depending on the length of the objects in that array. And so, you know, if I'm making 20 character cards and I was put them individually in there, there's no real way to do that and have them grabbed from the state store in each one. There is, but it's very, very messy. So here's where you'd be passing props. So you'd say like character equals the item of the array. And this will create 20 of those. And it's already yelling at me, oh, you need a key. All right, well, let's give it a key. Let's see what it looks like. So in here, I can say props. And we'll console log the props, make sure we're hitting. And we'll see what's available to us for a key. Right, earlier days, I used to just use the index of the array, but they tell you that is bad practice because it changes depending on the array. All right, so we do have an ID field for each one of these characters, so we can use that as a key. So we'll give it a key prop. Key equals item ID. All right, now it won't be mad, it won't yell at us. And we'll get rid of that console log because that is a lot of characters. So now we can create a card. We can build this little guy out here. And we can do that by looking at one of these objects and see what's available to us. So let's open this up. Oh, any questions at this point as far as the mapping and things like that are concerned?
Yeah, so we're not supposed to use the index as the key. How is that bad practice? Like, tell me how that is, how the array is mutable.
All right, so
Or can you
the array is mutable and the index can change. So like, let's say you were rendering these 20 characters, right? And you manipulated one of them or went through a sort method with it and repopulated state, it would technically be reassigning React to or sending React to a different component because it's got to keep track of each one of those components under the hood. So with the indexes being able to change by objects moving in the array creates a problem. Sometimes you're handcuffed and you have to do it that way to make React happy. The best way to do it is if it's available is to find a unique identifier to that object that's never going to change. So like that object's ID that we got back from the API, it's always going to be that number, whether it's the 5th element in the array or the 18th element in the array. It's always going to be that number. And that allows React to track it.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
I had a quick question.
Shoot.
Sorry, you said that it would be difficult as you map through these this list of characters. You said it would be difficult to connect. Was it the character card to the store?
Yeah.
Is that what you said? And is that because of material UI or is it because of this relationship of mapping and it being a subcomponent?
Oh, you know, I don't like material UI, but that's okay. No, it's just because of the mapping. It's just because of the mapping.
Oh, okay.
No, what it is like, well, conceptualize it. So think about this character card. All right, now we're not, let's say we're mapping and we're just returning nothing. So it's going to render 20 of these. How will we make the connection to the store to where it can pick out each one without duplicating?
That makes
think
sense.
of the logic you'd have to write. I mean, it's doable. Anything is doable in code, but you would have like 50 lines of code to accomplish the same goal we did here in 3.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I ran into that. Okay, great. Thank you.
No problem. All right, so let's create a character card. Let's do it. Let's see what we got. All right, characters 20. Let's take a look at one of these objects. What do we have available to us? Oh, all kinds of cool stuff in here. So they have a URL. Looks like we got a location object, a name. Well, a name's a good one we can use. So let's think about that. We're going to start grabbing some of the stuff out here and declaring it. So we're going to say const equal to an object. It's going to be equal to props, so we can list this stuff out. So I know the first one I see is I want name. Anybody see anything else in there they want to display on the card?
Imagine species
Species.
and its status.
Yeah, we can do species. I spelled species right? I think so. And status. I think status is like dead or alive for this, isn't it? Yeah, it sure is. Gotta love Rick and Morty. Anything else you think we want to put on this card that we can show users?
Image.
Yeah, we can put an image on there. Everybody likes photos, right?
Yeah.
Which one's our image? Let's see here. Oh, and the one that says image. How about that?
Image.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? We got name, species, status, image. We could put the location. The location might be fun because that's going to be a little different. Let's see the location. Because if you look, location's actually inside of an object, right? So we can't just technically just render that to the screen. But we can, dot chain into it when we need it. So let's start building this out. We got this empty div here. This is going to represent our card. So our card, let's start with the image. Now I like to wrap all my images with another div. For the CSS people, if you put an image tag inside of a div and then you make the image 100% width, you can control the responsiveness of that image with the outer div a lot easier than actually trying to style the image tag. So that's my method behind doing that. So our image is going to have a source. Source is going to equal the image URL. And then we're going to give it an alt tag because we got to be, can't even think of the word right now. It's getting late. Alt is going to be the name. So we have an image. Let's see if they show up. Do we get any images? Refresh. Any images? Why not any images? Why? We should be getting at least one image. Let's see what I did wrong. See what images. I grab it wrong. It's undefined 20 times. Ew. That's all props. I grab it wrong. Props.character. I did. Yeah. Yeah, there we go. That'll make it better. Hey, look, images. Woohoo! I should just love them live debugging sessions when you see somebody just completely break it. All right, so we have images now. Let's add the other stuff. So let's underneath the image, we'll give it, I don't know, like an H3. We'll call this, let's say, name. Actually, we don't even declare the name. They should just know it's the name of the character, right? And we'll throw some p tags on here. Use some block elements. Let's see. Species colon is going to be the species. Sorry for not looking. More p tags. What else we got? Status. And then we'll throw the location on there too. And we'll say location dot name. Because remember, we have to dot chain in that location object. So if we look at our character object and we see the location is another object. So I just targeted the name. And it gives you a URL to the location API. You can put a link in here and actually take you to a whole other like location card that they have built out with this API. It's kind of neat. We should start seeing everything. And we do. Rick Sanchez, species human, he's alive. And his location is Earth, replacement dimension. And we got Morty, he's from Earth. He's alive. Let's see, everybody not from Earth? Oh yeah. Abadango. Okay, say that 10 times fast. All right, any questions on that?
Can you, is there a way that we can like look at this repo? Can you send this to Git?
Not right now, because you guys are working on this project kind of the rest of the day, but I can later on.
Okay, great.
All right. Any other questions? And you guys want me to go any further?
I think I'm good. Thank you. That was helpful.
Oh, no problem. I try not to be too confusing, and I'm really good at teaching bad habits, so be careful.
Thank you.
No problem. All right. Well, if nobody's got any more questions, we ran a little over an hour there. And what I will do is I will post this video on YouTube and share the link when it compiles. So even though you won't have access to the repository to be like a guided project, you go back through the video and check it out.
Thank you.
No problem. All right. On that note, everybody have
Yes,
a great
please.
rest of your evening. Have a good one.
You
Shoot me
too.
a DM if you got any questions.
Thanks.
Good
Bye.
night.